The regular season is heating up, new stars are emerging, and that means more opportunities to win up to 25 times your cash on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection on a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's that easy. Let it fly to turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Watch your favorite players and get paid doing it this basketball season. See your entries make progress during the game or make new entries for the second half and the fourth quarter. 3-pointers, assists, rebounds, and everything in between are yours for the taking. Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
So our podcast is called Right and Wrong.
Are these your notes?
These
Are these your notes about what we're going to say?
That's a really good question.
The sculptor doesn't put their slab of clay or whatever on their plinth and then start doing the eyelashes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's like gushing over your back.
What's first for everything? This is it, guys. The big secret to getting published is you have to write a good book. You heard it here first. Hello, and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jamie, and joining me today, all the way from New York City, fresh off the release of her incredible debut novel, Daphne Palasi Andreades. Welcome to the show, Daphne.
Thank you so much, Jamie. I'm really, really happy to be here. This is my first event or book-related event in the UK, so I'm really excited.
Brilliant. Well, I'm excited to be chatting with you. Let's kick off right away with the book itself, Brown Girls.
Mm-hmm.
And for everyone listening, would you like to just sort of tell us what it's all about?
Absolutely. Yes. So my debut novel, Brown Girls, follows a group of young women of color who are primarily first and second generation immigrant daughters as they come of age in actually my hometown, which is Queens, New York, here in New York City, just a borough. And it is told through kind of an unconventional point of view. It's told through the first person plural or the we voice. And so it's a chorus of women's voices that are narrating this story.
Yeah, I was as I was reading it, I was trying to think. I can't remember the last time that I had read a book with a sort of collective narrator where it was always us and we. Was it always the plan for it to be written like that, or did you start off with something more traditional?
You know, the strangest thing happened when I started writing. When I started writing Brown Girls, I had only written short stories up until that point. And when I first started writing this piece, I was a second-year student in my MFA program. I was taking these different fiction writing workshops and, literature and craft seminars. And like I said, I had only written short stories just from, the more traditional points of view. So third person, he, she, or the first person, I. But when I started writing this, what would become my debut novel, I was immediately drawn to writing from the we. And usually in my short stories, I would, if I had written them from the first person point of view, sometimes during revision, I would switch it and try writing from the third just to see if that just felt right for the story. But for Brown Girls, it just felt like that was the voice that I had to use, even if I didn't, I'll be honest with you, even if I didn't completely understand at that moment in time, consciously why I was making that choice.
It's interesting. It's like it found you as opposed to the other way around.
Yes, absolutely.
Amazing. So how long has this book been in have you been working on it?
Yes. So as I mentioned, I started it in my second year of grad school.
Yeah.
And that was back in 2017. Yes,
Okay.
2017. And I worked on it. I worked on a first draft that year. But one of the hardest parts writing this book was completing it. So I think that's why I bounced back and forth between it and like other short stories and essays. And I had this incredible workshop professor, my very last workshop professor at Columbia here in New York, who is the author Paul Beatty. And Paul was such a generous, kind teacher that like even after I graduated from the program, from time to time, I would reach out to him with questions, or if he happened to be in New York, he would take me out for coffee and we would just chat about, books we were reading. And he would always like very kindly ask about the work. And I remember him asking, "Hey, how's that project, Brown Girls, that you were working on? How's it going?" And like for the, handful of times, 2 or 3 times that I saw him, I had nothing to report because I wasn't finished.
Yeah.
And I was so embarrassed / ashamed that I didn't finish this project. And at this point, it was like 2020 in January. I think that was, or February, that was the last time I got to have coffee with him.
Mm.
And then I promised myself, I was like, oh my gosh, I really should sit and finish this project. I'm so embarrassed every time I see him. I want to just finish a draft like for myself. And then, so I promised myself, okay, spring, I'm going to finish this thing, March, April, I'm going to do it. And like at the time I was working 2 different part-time jobs, one as a preschool teacher and the other as a waitress / bartender here in Lower Manhattan, just so I could like write during the day. And so anyway, I was working on this book, trying to work on this book, working on other projects, reading my friends' stories, trying to make ends meet. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to finish this thing in the spring, just like, because I promised myself and I promised this teacher who I look up to. And then the pandemic hit and everything shut down.
Yeah.
So that made it extra hard to finish. But I'm very glad I did. So
Well, it seems to have worked out well since you finished it.
Yes, thank you.
So you mentioned that you've done a lot of short stories, and you've had short stories and essays published in compilations and things like that. The style of the book, it's very poetic and lyrical with these very short sort of chapters. Do you think that that's you having so much experience with short stories and this kind of thing? Is that why you decided to write it in these kind of short chapters of sort of flash shots of moments and things like that?
Yeah, I love that question. I had written only short stories before. I don't know. I just didn't, I think it was more so about not having the confidence, but also I didn't really have a vision for what I could potentially write about, like for a longer form, like a novel. So Brown Girls actually started as a short story for those workshops.
Okay.
I handed in maybe 15 pages into my first workshop then at the time, or that was the first time I showed classmates anything. And then I thought, I think that's it. I think that's all it'll be, because I've only written short stories. And then my classmates said this very annoying thing at the time, which sometimes you get in workshop but they were like, I think this short story could be a novel. And that annoyed me because I was like, can't you just take it like for what it is? Just how is that helpful for me? But, in retrospect, if I'm very honest, I'm grateful for that comment.
Yeah.
And they were right. I'll say that they were right because I think there was just so much more that I wanted to say. I kept thinking about this specific place and this specific choral voice. Yeah, I don't know. It still is a very, very different like vignette or like fragmented structure than any of the short stories I had written, which, I suppose you could definitely read Brown Girls and see each vignette or fragment as like its own scene. I definitely think they weave together as scenes, but I didn't really write fragments, I suppose, even in my short stories. So this was definitely its own thing.
It sounds like it really took on a life of its own from choosing to be sort of us, we perspective, and then also like the way that it's kind of grown out and shaped in this snapshot style.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I will also say that, yes, I think many of the choices, like many of the formal choices, they were organic. And I was driven by what I was interested in seeing as a form and like what I hadn't seen before. So there's like a more conscious, level of thinking going on there. But I had this great teacher who, workshop teacher at the time, who also just like really encouraged us to be unafraid of taking risks in our work. And that was just really like so helpful. And so it just changed my approach at that time. I guess I thought, what risks could I take on an emotional level, on a thematic level, and then also on a formal level. So I was thinking about those funky short vignettes and this strange we voice, and then just like writing from a very personal place.
Yeah, I was going to say, and it does feel very organic, because sometimes I'll read things and a part of me is sort of thinking this might be good, but it does feel like you've made this choice for the sake of making this choice. Whereas with Brown Girls, it feels so organic. It feels very grounded. And as you said, personal. I was going to ask, how much of this does draw from your own life experiences?
Ooh, a spicy question. I love it. Yes, there are certainly aspects of the novel that draw from, my own lived experiences, some of my own memories of Queens, New York, which is actually one of the most like ethnically and linguistically diverse places in the US, perhaps the whole world. I don't know. I feel like I've heard that somewhere, but don't quote me exactly. But yes, going back to your question, there were certainly aspects of my own experiences that I drew upon when I was writing this book, but it is also told through this we voice, through this chorus, and really wanting and trying to capture that we. I viewed the we, like eventually I articulated to myself, it's just like, who is this we? Like, what does it encapsulate? Like in those early drafts, I was still searching and I think just trying to figure that out for myself. And then eventually I think it became clearer that I wanted the we to encapsulate these young women of color, immigrant daughters across different diasporas, which was definitely a challenge, but like a really fun, beautiful thing to write. So like one of the preliminary kinds of research that I did to like step out of my own experiences, my own, memories of this place was to like informally interview childhood friends, actually. And loved ones, just a handful from Queens who I had grown up with. And similar to me, they were also second generation immigrant daughters, and their families, like my family is Filipino. I'm of Filipino descent, and my girlfriends are my childhood friends. Their families, they're like of Chinese descent, of Haitian, Jamaican descent, Dominican, Mexican. And so I just informally interviewed them. I don't know. I wanted to hear these other experiences. And so it was a really fascinating process of sending them some questions about and the questions ranged from like, what are sights and sounds from our neighborhood in Queens that come to mind, or like, what are things that having grown up here in the US that your parents don't know, vice versa. What are things your parents know that you don't know? And it was really, really cool to see like moments where we overlapped and then where we diverged, and then to like take all of that information and then just use it to like imagine like scenes, conflicts, an atmosphere to the book. So that was kind of integral to stepping outside of my own experiences.
Yeah. Sounds like you really, it's all about sort of the investment in the community, and reading the book, it feels like that. It's so about the community. It's amazing. I mean, I am astounded that this is the first novel that you've ever written, to be honest.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, you've absolutely nailed it. But so speaking of first book, just out, literally only been out a few weeks now. It must all be a bit mad at the moment, somewhere between sort of wild celebration and non-stop press. How are you feeling about it now? It's out in the world.
Oh my gosh, Jamie, it is so gratifying, and just like for me, well, back in December, I'll be very honest. Back in December, I was so, stressed and just like worried. I was like, oh my God, what have I done? Like my family is going to read this. I think my friends are going to read this. My classmates are going to read this. Strangers, I want to take it back. I'm not ready. I'm not ready for this.
I changed my mind.
I changed my mind. You can take the advance back. Just kidding. Just kidding. I need that money. So back in December, I was really worried, but I had a friend remind me. She has one book out herself. I think it was published in 2019. Her name is Crystal Hana Kim, and Crystal was just like, Daphne, I don't know why you're freaking out for January. Like, this is an accomplishment. This is a celebration. Everything, every book event, every great bit of publicity, it's all a celebration. And you know your book best. So I think that really helped ground me and not freak out a little bit less. But to be fair, it also is just an insane time in the world with Omicron. That made everything so much more uncertain, back in December. But it's still a celebration, I think. So I'm very happy.
I think just getting, that it's such a huge achievement, like not just publishing a book, I think just finishing a book is anyone who finishes a book, I'm like, you should give yourself a pat on the back, because it is a hard thing to do, is to finish a book and be happy with it.
Yes, absolutely. I 100% agree. Sometimes you need a teacher to shame you.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what you need. Or you need one of your friends to be like, this would be better as a full novel, not just a short.
Yes. Don't hate on your friends for saying that.
No, the best friends, the best support groups are the ones that challenge you. And I always believe that. So.
I totally agree.
And if you didn't have that, we wouldn't have Brown Girls to read. So there you go. How are you feeling about it now that, it's everyone's got it, and there's must be lots of reviews coming in and people talking about it on social media and things?
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really exciting. I'm stammering now because it's so, it's hard to imagine. I'm just like, what? You're kidding me that the book is out in the US and then also internationally like that. It's more than I could have imagined and more than I can wrap my head around most days. So I'm just like, well, I guess I'll just, try to work on the next thing. That's what I can do.
So what is the next thing?
Oh my gosh, I set myself up for this.
Gotcha.
No, I'm laughing nervously because, I have some ideas. I was looking back on some, interestingly enough, short stories that I thought, is this something that, could potentially be longer? Is there something more to say? Can I develop this character or world more? So I'm looking back on some of those earlier pieces. I had a novel that I started or was working on in 2019 before the pandemic hit, like toward the end of 2019, I was working on that piece. And I revisited it. I revisited those, 70 pages or so. And I was just like, I don't know. I feel like a different person now.
Yeah.
Almost. Yeah. So it's, what I'm trying to say is that, like, I think it feels most important for me to try to figure out now, like, what might stick? What do I feel connected to and passionate about now?
Yeah.
To work on for the next few years. So I don't know. It's kind of, some ideas are incubating, but I don't really have an answer.
You're still looking. You're looking for that new thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we can get a bit industry talk now.
Sure.
When you signed, it's with Penguin, is it, in the US?
Yes.
And then HarperCollins in the UK. When you signed with for the books, was it a multiple book deal or was it just for Brown Girls?
Yes, it was for a 2-book deal. Okay. So I really got to figure this out.
Yeah. Yes, I think you do.
I'm on contract to figure this out. So
but it's so interesting that you say, you look back at stuff that you've written and you just think, I was a different person back then, and like, this isn't a story that I could or would tell now. I think it's Zadie Smith who almost always doesn't like her early novels. And do you think that there's going to be a time in some years where you'll look back at Brown Girls and think, I couldn't write that now. Like, this is not a story I would tell.
Oh my gosh. That's so funny. Oh, I adore Zadie Smith's work.
She's amazing.
She's incredible. I also read too that, like, she physically, like, feels nauseous when she, like, picks up old work of hers to, like, old novels of hers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. I wonder if that's because, like, she was just a different person at that point in time as well. Younger self. But I don't know. Sometimes I feel that way now. I'm like, oh gosh, I've been living with this book for many years. And so, it's weird. It's weird in some ways for it to be quote unquote new and, of course, on the bookshelves and out in the world for readers. But for me, it feels like that's my baby from a few years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost 5 years for you now that you started writing that. So
yes.
Well, it's a strange thing looking back and reflecting on. I think it's across all art forms as well, whether it's music or like painting and things like that.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing that you've got a 2-book deal. You should probably figure out what your second book's going to be. Whilst we're talking about industry stuff, you've been writing from quite a young age, quite a long time.
Yes, I have.
When did you get your agent, and what was the process like for landing an agent?
Oh man, I love this. I love telling this story because it's just like, I don't know, fate or serendipity or whatever. I was working on actually first a short story collection, and then I started working on Brown Girls, which, as I said, I thought would just be, I don't know, maybe a 30-page story or something like that, and or a novella at one point. Yes, as the piece just got longer and the pages kind of kept accumulating, I really didn't know what to call it. But yes, when I was a student, and I think this might apply too, even if a person hasn't gone down the route of like, doing an MFA or studying writing formally. But like things that some of my teachers had told me were, focus on the manuscript, focus on finishing that manuscript and having that story be the best that it can possibly be before you go out into the quote unquote, industry or approach agents about it. And I really took that to heart. I know that is not at all the case for many writers. But for my first book, I really took it to heart because I was like, well, I really want to work on this project and finish it and know that I can stand behind it, and that like I have thought about it a lot. I've revised it. I've workshopped it. I've sent it around to friends. I've repeated that process like 10 times. I know this is a strong draft. So I wanted to, I suppose, feel as much certainty as I could behind the work and behind my own vision for a piece before sending it out. And it inevitably, you get responses like, oh, this isn't for me, or I got responses, this isn't for me, or this we voice, makes no sense to me, or why is it so fractured? I don't understand. And then I think that enabled me to be like, well, I know why I'm making these choices, and I know I stand behind these choices. So I know it's just not a good fit, and it's not for lack of revision necessarily, So I really, really wanted to have this manuscript that I had worked on and that I was proud of. And perhaps that was why it took me so long to finish, or so long to be satisfied with the draft. And yes, before the pandemic happened and everything shut down, in the summer of 2019, I had gone to a writers' conference here in the States, in Tennessee, of all places. And I specifically went knowing that one agent, who is my now agent, her name is Jin On, she's with the Wiley agency. I knew that she would be there. So I was kind of high key, low key stalking her.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my gosh, Jin is going to be there. I love so many of her authors. And yeah, so I was extremely nervous when we met that summer, just very briefly for, I don't know, 30 minutes or something like that. And we were chatting. We were just chatting about books. It was very low key. She asked about my work. I told her about this quote unquote novella. And she was like, novella? You should not say that to an agent because I would have no clue what to do with that. And at that point I was like, oh, damn. Okay. I'm definitely going to call it a novel now. And
so that's how it became a novel.
So form is a weird thing. Genre is a weird thing.
Yeah.
So I met Jin that summer, but I felt like I had known of her just from the authors that she represents, many of whom are writers of color, which to me, that was just a really, really good sign. So yeah, I finished the manuscript in 2020, and then I contacted her. I reached out over email and queried her, and I think like a month later we signed together.
Amazing.
I signed with her. Yeah.
So how many agents were in your were in the pool of sort of low key stalking?
Ooh, yeah. Well, she is one of my dream agents. And I wanted to. It was a big step to feel ready to start querying. Just to get to that point, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, let's do this. Let's try and move forward. But yeah, I took this approach of having like a tiered approach in that I had, I don't know, about 6 dream agents, I guess, that I wanted to approach. And
that seems like a reasonable number.
Yes.
Yeah. Not too many, not too few.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I think that's very sensible.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's not the beginning of your writing journey, but it's sort of the beginning of your publishing journey.
Yes.
If you're, we were talking about how you were reading earlier work and you thought, oh, I can't and won't write this anymore. If you could go back in time to when you first started writing, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh, man. I love that question. It's such a great question. And I haven't really been asked, to be honest. Well, I think, I'll be honest with you. I think that, so much of writing Brown Girls was thinking about all the things that I wanted to tell my younger self. I mean, just in general. But to speak more specifically, I guess, about what I would tell my younger self who was trying to pursue writing. And I loved to keep journals at that point. I also I wrote poems, I painted, but I never really saw a path for myself as an author. I never thought that was a path that could be open to me. I mean, nobody in my family had really pursued the arts or writing as a career. So I just didn't even conceive that it would be possible, even though I did practice. I did it, throughout my teens. And I think that is what's most important. I mean, I would encourage her to just keep doing what she's doing of sitting down and keeping the journal, doing the work, going to the writing classes, reading, going to art museums. And I mean, I think I say that because I think encouragement really goes a long way, especially if someone might not have those models in their life.
Because so much of it's self-belief and
Yes.
you had the confidence and self-belief to persevere with Brown Girls, even if some agents and people said this this we narrator doesn't make sense. But you pressed on it, and it's worked out. It works out really well.
Yes.
But, I'm sure that there's lots of people that write things which are not traditionally written and sort of back down when they get a few people saying, "Oh, this is too out there."
Yes. Yeah. And I think lastly too, it's, I don't know. Yes, to some extent, some of that belief is, a self-belief and a belief in my work. But like, definitely don't get me wrong. There were so many days I wanted to give up or just didn't even think the project was worth completing. And that's where my community came in. That's where my partner, my writing friends, my teachers, this like incredibly loving and just encouraging community stepped in at those various moments to just say, keep writing, keep working. And I would not have been able to keep going or to finish this book without them, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, it's loads of the episodes of this podcast, I've asked people what advice they'd give to aspiring authors or themselves when they're younger. And so many of the times we've had find your tribe be like a very key part of that. It's like, find your tribe, find the people who are going to be there to support you. Because writing can be very lonely. And you need people to sort of bounce not just ideas back and forwards with, but also just like your emotions and like how you're feeling about it, and be there to kind of just say, you got this, if nothing else.
Yes, definitely. Or keep working harder.
Stop slacking.
Yes.
Amazing. Well, that's great advice, really heartfelt stuff. And that brings us on to the final question, which is often dreaded. If, Daphne, you were stranded on a desert island with a single book, which book would it be?
Okay, Jamie. So I will tell you the first book that came to mind, and it is a book that I loved. I love, and it is Milkman by Anna Burns.
Okay.
Yes, I could stay in her sentences, her like insane, joyous, funny sentences, and just like keep studying them. I think she's brilliant.
Yeah.
So
have you read it more than once?
Yes, okay. I have.
It's passed the test then.
Yes. Yeah, totally.
That's good.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Daphne. Thanks for coming on and sharing your experience with us with Brown Girls and the sort of journey that you've taken. It's been a real treat hearing from you. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. This was really fun and such a joy. I'm so honored. It's been such a pleasure. And for everyone listening, if you want to keep up with everything that Daphne's doing, you can go to her website, daphnePalasiAndreades.com, or follow her on Twitter and Instagram at Daphne Palasi A. To make sure you don't miss an episode of this podcast, follow us on Twitter at Right and Wrong UK or on Instagram at Right and Wrong Podcast. Thanks again for everyone listening. Thanks again to Daphne, and we will catch you on the next one.